We just want to welcome you guys to our third episode of Real Speaks to Real. Once again, we want to thank everybody for subscribing, for supporting our new channel. And the whole reason why we're doing this is because we wanted to have a chance to have some real conversations. And today we want to do something a little different. We want to give the audience a chance to get to know who we really are. And what we want to talk about today is why we chose to be abstinent and wait for marriage to have sex. All right.
So we get this question a lot, especially working as youth ministers with teenagers. This is obviously something that at that point in time, when you're a youth, when you're a teenager, you're thinking about. And that's kind of the decision when we made the decision to choose to be abstinent. And kind of around the time we met, we were both in junior high school when we met, and started dating when we were sophomores and in high school. And when we started dating, we knew that that was a conversation that we were going to have with each other, because I think it just brought clarity to what we were trying to achieve in our relationship. And some might say, oh my gosh, that's kind of a really young age to be having such a serious conversation in a relationship. But I would say that if you're entering into a relationship, and if you're at the age where you feel like you can do something adult as being in a relationship with another person, then it's important to have that communication.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it kind of helped lay the foundation for our marriage as well.
Was that a conversation that you were having with other girls that you dated?
No. But I mean, obviously, in high school, it's something that guys would just talk about all the time. And I think what was important for me is because I always wanted to try to be different. Like, I didn't want to be like everybody else. And a lot of my friends back then, I mean, they had a whole bunch of different girlfriends, and you know the guy talk, and you would count the numbers of how many people you've been with and this and that. But because we were going to a Christian school and the values that we were taught at that school, thank God through His grace, I had a desire to want to go into ministry. And because I wanted to be a pastor, I really didn't quite know how else I could really make that commitment to God, to say I'm serious outside of saying, you know what, I'm going to wait for marriage. If I'm going to be different, if I'm going to be perhaps quote unquote set apart from other people, I got to do things differently. And it was important to me that one day when I was a youth pastor, or even when I decided to have kids, I did not want to be a hypocrite and tell them to do something that I couldn't do myself.
Yeah.
It was just real important to me. So that was the main reason why I chose to wait.
Yeah, I mean, initially, because we started dating so young, I think it was kind of like obvious, or it was okay for us to say that, we were going to wait for a specific amount of time. I don't think that at 15, we should have been expecting each other to be intimate. But so I think that my initial reasons were for, religious reasons, right? That's what the Bible talks about, is waiting for marriage. And that's kind of what we were taught in the church. That's what our parents taught us. And so initially it started out as an act of obedience for everything that we had been taught. But as we kind of grew up and continued our relationship, I realized that it had to be something that I did for my own reasons. It couldn't be something that I did for somebody else, because if that were the case, then it would not be long lasting, and it would be just another thing that I had just, committed to but hadn't followed through on.
And I'm going to say this, I think because the fact that you had respected yourself enough, right? you had certain standards that I had to uphold to, and you wouldn't allow me to treat you any kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the misconception. Like, I think girls a lot of times often feel like I have to do XYZ in order for him to stay, or I have to do XYZ in order for him to love me. And I don't know what it was about me at that age, but I was kind of like, no, I'm not playing on anybody else's terms. I'm playing on mine. And God just happened to bring along somebody who was willing to jump through the hoops that I said.
Yeah, and let me say it was not an easy task. I mean, obviously, you know, my wife is a 10. I mean, it's easy to see that. I got lucky and married up. But definitely during college, because we chose to go to the same college, that brings different challenges. And I think part of how I set myself up to succeed is I had friends surrounding me that had similar goals as well. You know, my buddy Jerome, you know, he was my accountability partner in college, and we would have those real discussions. Like when we would go out on dates and stuff, whenever I would get back to the dorm, he would meet with me and say, well, what did you do?
Yeah.
Did you put yourself in a situation to fall, or did you respect, you know, your girl? Did you keep your hands off her? Did you, like, we would have that real tough conversation.
And that's really rare to be able to, like, let yourself be that vulnerable with another person, to be able to keep you in check with something that you had personally wanted to achieve.
Well, especially another guy, because I mean, like I said, for guys, at least growing up, it was something that they would use as like bragging rights.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, in high school, you definitely had peer pressure. I had peer pressure too. I think maybe it's different for guys. Maybe it's, you know, a different kind of pressure, whatever. But I don't think by any stretch of the imagination was it just like an easy thing to do, because there were always people in our ear.
Right.
Whether it was people telling us that the commitment that we made was dumb, and that we wouldn't be, you know, able to like hold true to it. Everybody kind of doubting whether or not we were really serious because we were so young, or whether it was like, you know, oh, because you guys you're not going to stay together, or what's the big deal? It's not that big of a deal. God will forgive you anyway.
Right.
Like, you know, there were all kinds of arguments that could have been made for, you know, us deciding, oh, it's not that important.
For sure. And I think for me, it was kind of twofold. I think on one end, I did have people telling me there's no way I could do it and achieve that. So my pride, I wanted to prove them wrong. But then the second part is I had to make a choice to sacrifice. You know, am I able to sacrifice my wants and my desires and deny my flesh and say no, in order to walk in obedience to God? And I think that's something that's kind of lost a little bit in this culture nowadays.
Yeah, you don't hear a lot about sacrifice nowadays. Nowadays, it's kind of like, if you feel it, do it. You know, if it feels right to you,
right,
go for it.
Right.
And that's all well and good in the moment, but then nobody talks about the consequences after the fact. And that was another thing too. Like for me, I knew I wasn't ready to have no babies. Yep. So in my mind, I was like, if I'm not ready for what could result from sex, then I'm not ready for sex.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, and like I said, obviously it was a lot of cold showers. There was moments when I would just have to run away from you. You know, just
I don't know about
from the temptations.
But we did have to make a lot of conscious decisions on things that we would do and things that we would not do. Places we would go and places we would not go.
We had to set a lot of boundaries up, but I think because we set boundaries up when we were dating, naturally we had those similar boundaries in our marriage.
I would say that I think because we were disciplined in how we handled our dating relationship, we were able to keep that same discipline in our marriage in terms of not being tempted to cheat or even in terms of like whatever you have to do in marriage, our finances, and being open about communicating about those things, trust. And I don't know, I think that just because we had to be so open with each other about that and lean on each other for that so much, I think that it allows us to be open in our marriage about it. And intimacy is not something that a lot of people feel comfortable opening up to anybody about.
Yeah.
And so those were conversations that we had to have early on about like what our commitment was to not go there while we were dating. So I think it's opened up the door for us to have open communication about that in our marriage relationship.
Yeah, and also like looking back, I think that's probably why we got married younger. Because I don't know if I would have got married as young if we were sexually active. It's like...
Not only that, I mean, we had been dating since we were in high school too. Yeah. You know what I mean? But I agree.
So was it 7 years? We dated 7 years?
Yeah, we dated 7 years before we got married. And I would agree. I don't know that, personally, I don't know that we would have ever gotten married if we were sexually active before, because I'm not sure that the level of courtship that we had in our dating relationship would have led us to be married. I don't know.
It's funny. It's like oftentimes whenever I would do like a series on sex and I would even talk with youth about it, I would always tell our girls like, and obviously it's from experience because a lot of times when we speak to people, it's from our own experiences in life. But I would tell them like, why would you give up? And this is like the Lord of the Rings. I'm big in the Lord of the Rings. You remember that?
Nerd alert.
Nerd alert. But there was a character, Schmeagol, and he was obsessed with this ring that he called Precious. And I would tell girls all the time, like, why would you give up your most precious gift if he's not willing to give up his freedom?
I think it goes vice versa too for guys. Like, nowadays that is not just, one-sided. And I think guys have to understand the value of that too, because it's not just an act. And I think a lot of times intimacy has been reduced to just an act. And we all know that there are so many things that come along with the act of being intimate with somebody else.
Right.
Regardless of the value that you might place on it at that time, there are always lingering effects, whether it's mental, emotional, physical.
Yeah, for sure.
Within your social life, there's always, it affects something. There's nothing that every action has a reaction, no matter what it is. And so I think that's another thing that does not get talked about as much. Is the follow-ups or the repercussions of intimacy in any kind of relationship.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think that sometimes people also feel like maybe it's just too late.
Yeah, like they've already been intimate with other people.
Right. But I think at any point you could always make that choice and that decision to do things different.
Yeah.
I always say nothing changes if nothing changes, right? So if you're in different relationships and you keep going about things the same way and it's not working, well, nothing changes if nothing changes, right?
That's so true. Yeah, I agree. I think that once again, you have to remember what your purpose in doing this is, right? Like, again, it could have been reduced for me just to a religious thing, but I had deeper purpose for it. I wanted my marriage to look different. I wanted our relationship to look different.
Let's stop right there. How do you think, like, when you talk with other couples, just from your personal experience, what differences do you see, like, in our
Yeah.
marriage versus, waiting versus somebody else who,
Yeah, and we have friends who are in both scenarios, right?
hmm
So, I never have to be jealous of anybody else, right?
it's true.
Like everything that is within our intimate relationship has only been experienced with each other.
Right.
And so that is never something I have to question. I don't have to question, if I'm your type, or if you like this, or because number one, we communicate, but number two, we were able to learn and grow together.
Yeah.
And that might be something too, that though a lot of couples who do wait for marriage, they might not have those conversations, and that might make it difficult in their marriage, intimacy
Right.
difficult in their
Right.
marriage. So that's something that has to go hand in hand with this. Like, it can't just be, we're not having sex and we're not talking about it, we're not thinking about it, we're not like that's not realistic.
Right.
Like, you know what I
Right.
mean?
For sure. For sure.
But we were able to kind of learn and grow and experience with each other, and that's not something that I've ever regretted, nor do I know any couples who have waited that have regretted that.
Yeah.
What I do know from other couples is regretting other people in their past who they've been intimate with for a myriad of reasons, because one was more serious than the other, and so it wasn't cherished, or it was just like after the sex then they were gone, or you know what I mean, whatever the case may be. Like I said, there's so many different consequences or after effects.
Yeah.
And that was kind of not something that we ever had to think about.
I was watching a YouTube video a few days ago, actually, and it was just a bunch of guys who were just being interviewed about sex and their experiences with sex, and most of them were not married. And it's funny, like, the things they talk about, I never even think about. Case in point, one guy was just talking about the anxiety that he gets when it comes time to having sex, because then you start wanting to compare yourself to other people.
Yeah.
And am I as good as the other person she was with? Yeah. And vice versa.
Think if you measure up or not.
Yeah, I've had even friends who are married, and that's specifically something that they brought up to me. Yeah. is how they have a hard time dealing with the fact, obviously, my wife has been with other people, I've been with other people, so you deal with the comparison.
Yeah.
But that's something we just have never thought about.
And I mean, I just appreciated like the commitment of that. I think that making that commitment in our dating life has made our marriage commitment stronger.
For sure.
I was teaching my class. We were talking about parts of speech and whatnot and grammar. I'm an English teacher. But love is an action, right? It's not something like, although it is a feeling and emotion, your feelings and emotions are fleeting. They are changed by
moment by moment,
any circumstance.
Yep.
But the commitment that we made, that is the thing that's strong.
Yeah.
And the thing that's supposed to bond. And so I think that the commitment that we made in our dating life just reinforced our marriage commitment.
And I think it's kind of cool. It's like, man, every day I'm married to and I get to wake up and be with my best friend.
You say that today.
I say it today.
All right, tomorrow.
She pissed me off tomorrow.
And then I'll have another name that we shall not say.
But it's true. I do find myself like, I don't know, happy.
Yeah, and I think too, I enjoy the fact that we have something that nobody else will be able to have. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
And so a lot of people can say that with their first, but if you're in your marriage relationship, I think it just builds the bond even stronger. So what advice would you give to people, teenagers or adults who would like to be abstinent until they get married?
Ooh. first advice that I would give you is the importance of finding somebody who can help keep you accountable.
Accountability.
I think so many times, like, we all try to do things like on our own and this and that and the isolation. But I think the moments when your flesh is weak, you know, you give in, you often find yourself failing, you know? But I think if you have that accountability, somebody in your life who you could just be brutally honest with, they could be brutally honest with you. I think that's probably one of the best things that I've ever had.
And somebody who will encourage you in your endeavor. Like, you're obviously going to have people who are going to say, you're crazy, that's stupid, that's old-fashioned, it's antiquated. But find that one person who will encourage you, regardless if they might not always agree, but at least they'll encourage you in your pursuit of your goal.
And let me say this. I was watching the news, and they were talking about, like, during COVID, relationships, dating relationships have been far more better. And that's because more couples now are doing Zoom and even couples in different states, even though they can't physically be with each other, they're learning how to communicate better on Zoom and learning who each other are and I think those things you might not discover as fast until you remove sex out of the way. So
they're taking more time to learn about the individual rather than deal with the
getting jiggy with
everything that comes with intimacy.
For sure.
So, and I think that was another really big thing that we had going for us. First of all, having literally grown up together pretty much, but then also too, like, taking time to strengthen the other parts of our relationship, which quite frankly, you know, are going to be the lasting parts. Intimacy is an important part of any relationship. So I don't want to throw that to the wayside and act like it's not important. It is very important. And if there are issues in your relationship surrounding that is something that you should address as well. However, I think that it has to be built upon something. And I
mean, if you weigh the pros and the cons for waiting or not, like, have you ever sat down and wrote all the pros down and sat down and wrote all the cons down for waiting? You know, one of the cons I've always had, and obviously is before we got married, is I said, well, am I missing out? Am I missing out on, you know, the things that my friends are? In hindsight, like I said, now that I'm in a marriage and I have the boundaries of marriage, I don't deal with any of the stress and the anxiety that they deal with. Like, I'm completely free of that. And maybe that even makes our intimacy even better because, you know,
there's just comfortability.
You know,
there's no second guessing yourself.
For sure.
And I'll say, like I said before, in terms of concerns about cheating, I mean, obviously anybody can cheat at any time that they want to. However, I do know that you have the ability to be disciplined and not only be guided by, you know, a sexual desire that you have in the moment, because you've proven that for years.
And I don't think, like, some people think, like, well, once I get married, I could just shut it off. I don't think it works like that. I think the habits that you form now when you're single, you carry that over into the marriage.
Good or bad. Right. Yeah, I agree. In addition to accountability, I think that anybody who is wanting or desiring to be abstinent until they get married has to, once again, make sure that they have an internal purpose other than just, you know, for somebody else or, you know, a religious commitment. Religious commitment is fine and all well and good, but we know that has to be fostered by a deep relationship with the Lord, and that should grow. It shouldn't just be like, I've paid my dues, I've made this promise, and because if it's not something that is important to you and that you have built strong reasons behind and purpose behind, then it's gonna be, you know, like anything else that we make a New Year's resolution and then it's
exactly
yeah, it has to be purposeful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, any other tips and tricks?
No, I mean, if there's anybody, and like I said, you know, this is something that you've been thinking about, or perhaps you have never even thought about it, you know, why not consider? You know, write all the pros down, write all the cons down for abstinent and sustaining, and just see what outweighs which.
Yeah.
Like I said, for us, I mean, I don't have any regrets just because, I mean, from my experience thus far, I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. I'm happy.
Right. And I'm sure there are people with different experiences with their own reasons, but in our experiences serve.
And one of the things that people might want to bring up as well, you know, if you haven't really been with that many, you know, people, you know, they talk about the experience of it.
Right. Like,
well, how does that,
well,
can you share how it works in our marriage?
Well, I just think that first of all, we didn't have anything to go off of, so we didn't know what we were missing. So that if we were missing anything, which I didn't believe that we were, we have had great experiences. But what I believe that comes from is, again, the thought that more partners, or doing it early, or doing it whenever you feel like it, is better. Like, whatever your feelings are, let your feelings guide you. And we don't follow that in any other areas of our life, right? If just because I want to go out and buy $1 million home and I'm really feeling great about it and my family could really use it, we have 3 growing kids. I can't just go out and do that. Just because I love chocolate, I cannot only eat chocolate all day, every day. Like, so that's not something that we adopt in any other area of our life. So I think that there's something to be said for having discipline and purpose in this area of your life too.
And then, like I said, it's never too late. Even if you've, you know, already been with people and this and that, you could always choose from this moment forward to try to do things different. Once again, nothing changes if nothing changes.
And I would encourage people who are in a marriage relationship, if they are having issues around intimacy, maybe they waited and the experience is not everything that they hoped it would be, there are ways to help. There are people who can help. There are you have to, and first of all, communicate with your spouse. That's something that's really important. But I think that you have to be open to saying, this is an area that I think I could use some support in. This is an area that I'd like to learn more about. Let's learn and grow with each other in that. I think that's important too. Well, thanks for joining us on another episode of Real Speaks to Real. We enjoy that you guys tune in, and we hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have not already, please subscribe to our podcast.
Hit that like button.
Hit the like button, hit the share button, and stay tuned for what we'll have coming up next month.
Thanks so much.
Bye.